The Watchman's beginning. 19-year-old Anand Kumar Sharma had one dream: to escape. Escape the house where cruelty was louder than conversation, and the relatives who reminded him daily that he was unwanted. By the time he finally ran away from his village in central India, he carried nothing except a bag of clothes and the small, stubborn hope that Mumbai, the city of lights, might treat him better than his own family ever did. But the city was indifferent. Its streets were crowded, its nights too long, and the few rupees Anand had saved were vanishing faster than he could count. He slept near train platforms or under broken bus shelters, blending into the millions who came to Mumbai chasing survival. Then one morning, while sipping cheap tea from a roadside stall, he overheard two men talking about a hotel watchman vacancy. It sounded simple enough: guard a building, stay awake, earn a few coins. Anything was better than sleeping hungry. He followed the address scribbled on a napkin and found himself in front of a crumbling 3-story hotel on a narrow back street. The paint had peeled into scars, the signboard flickered weakly, and a sour smell of damp walls hung in the air. Still, when the owner asked, "Can you stay up all night?" Anand said yes without hesitation. That job, that decision, would change everything. The weight of the past. To understand how Anand survived what came next, you have to know where he came from. He was born in a small Brahmin family in Paragayan, near Raipur, a tiny village where tradition weighed heavier than compassion. His father, a priest, earned just enough to feed 4 sons. When the old man died of a sudden heart attack, grief didn't unite the family, it broke it further. Anand's eldest brother, a police officer, took him in, but his wife despised the boy. She made him scrub floors, sleep on a thin mat, and eat last if at all. Whenever anything went missing, she'd glare at Anand. "Thief!" She'd spit, and her husband would beat him until his eyes swelled. By 16, he had learned that silence was safer than defending himself. And when the pain became unbearable, he found relief in the wrong places: cheap liquor, bad company, and the illusion that he mattered somewhere, to someone. He spent a few nights in jail for petty fights, the kind that leave no record but plenty of shame. Eventually, his older brothers decided they were done with him. One sent him a letter. "Send Anand to Mumbai. Maybe he'll change there." Change. He laughed when he read it. The only thing that changed was his address. Thrown away again. When Anand arrived in Mumbai, his second brother, a waiter at a luxury hotel, met him at the station. For a brief moment, Anand felt hopeful. The man smiled, bought him a cup of tea, told him to come home and rest. That feeling lasted exactly 1 meal. Before Anand could take his first bite, his brother's face twisted with contempt. "I know what kind of trouble you are," he snapped. "My wife warned me. You're just a burden." He kicked the plate aside. Rice scattered across the floor like fallen teeth. Then he kicked Anand out of the house. That night, Anand sat on a curb with no money, no family, and no idea what to do next. He watched the city move around him, cars flashing by, voices blending into static, and realized something brutal. In Mumbai, no one cares if you disappear. So he stopped waiting for kindness. He found the watchman job, took it, and started sleeping inside the small, dusty lobby of the hotel. His uniform was too big, his shoes too small, but at least he had a roof over his head. A spark of peace. Despite everything, Anand wasn't faithless. Every Friday, he visited the Haji Ali Dargah, a famous seaside shrine where people of every religion came to pray. He said the prayers calmed him, like dipping his heart in quiet water. Weeks passed. He began adjusting to the rhythm of the night shift, checking doors, logging names, pretending the creaks of the old building were harmless. Until one Friday evening. He was walking back from the Dargah, still holding the faint smell of incense on his clothes, when he felt it. Footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Following him down the dimly lit road. He turned, nothing. But the sound returned each time he moved. The faster he walked, the closer it came. When he finally spun around again, the street was empty except for the flickering orange light of a distant lamp. He laughed nervously and hurried inside the hotel. Only 2 other staff were working that night, both downstairs. Anand climbed to the 2nd floor, where his small room waited. The corridor smelled of dust and detergent. As he slid the key into his lock, a sudden pressure clamped around his wrist, cold, small, and unmistakably human. He froze. Then a chill brushed across his cheek, followed by a faint perfume, not from the street, not from any cleaner he knew. A scent like old flowers left too long in water. He jerked the door open, stumbled inside, and slammed it shut. When he turned on the light, the room looked exactly the same. Except for one detail, the bathroom door, which he clearly remembered closing that morning, now stood open. He stared at it for a long time before whispering to himself, "Maybe it's the wind." But that night, when he finally slept, his dreams were filled with something else, a face he didn't recognize, whispering his name through the crack of a door. The thing that followed him. The morning after that night, Anand woke up drenched in sweat. The memory of the cold hand clinging to his wrist haunted him, but the world outside seemed ordinary again. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, and the sound of distant traffic felt almost comforting. Almost. He pushed away the unease. He had work to do, rooms to check, guests to greet. Mumbai didn't pause for fear. Still, as he left for the front desk, he couldn't stop glancing at the corridor mirror, the one that faced his door. Its surface was smudged, but he swore there were faint finger streaks that hadn't been there before. He wiped them off and told himself it was nothing. The decline begins. That week, strange things began to happen. Some nights, he'd wake to find his window unlocked. Other times, his key would be missing, only to reappear inside his shoes. Once, he heard a child humming somewhere near the stairwell, faint, tuneless, and wrong for an empty hotel. He tried telling his coworkers, but they laughed it off. "You're overworked," one of them said. "Night shifts do that to people." Maybe they were right. But then the sickness started. At first, it felt like fever, his skin burning, his body trembling. The masseur who came weekly to his room told him his hands were unnaturally hot. "It's January, sir," the man said nervously. "Your body feels like fire. You should see a doctor." Anand smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just tired." But inside, he knew something else was wrong. The burning wasn't just fever, it felt like something inside him was angry. The mirror incident. 4 nights later, the illness worsened. His stomach turned without reason, his eyes ached under the blue hotel lights, and his reflection began to look unfamiliar. That night, he stood before the mirror after washing his face. The fluorescent light above him flickered, throwing his reflection in and out of shadow. For a split second, the face staring back didn't move the way it should. It smiled, but he hadn't. He stepped back. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. The reflection remained still, its smile fading into something blank. Anand splashed more water on his face and walked out, pretending it hadn't happened. But from that night forward, he avoided mirrors altogether. The night of the masseur. A few days later, his regular masseur arrived, the same man who had noticed the fever. Anand lay on his bed, face down, while the man began applying oil across his shoulders. The air was thick with the smell of eucalyptus and damp plaster. Halfway through, the masseur froze. His breathing changed, shallow, panicked. "What happened?" Anand asked, his voice muffled by the pillow. No answer. He turned his head, just as the man bolted for the door. The bottle of oil hit the floor, spilling across the tiles. "Wait! What's wrong?" Anand called after him, but the masseur was gone. The next day, Anand found him outside the hotel, refusing to come back. "What did you see?" Anand demanded. The man's hands trembled. "Sir, your face. Half of it turned black. Like someone poured ink over your skin. I saw a mark, a deep one, running down your cheek. It looked burnt." Anand touched his face, smooth, normal. The masseur backed away. "I've done this for 20 years. I've never seen anything like that. I can't help you." And with that, he left for good. The possession grows. That night, Anand's body stopped obeying him. When he went to bed after his shift, he woke suddenly unable to move, eyes open, lungs burning, heart hammering. He could hear his ceiling fan turning slowly, the rusted blades slicing the air. But in the dark corner by his feet, someone was standing there. He couldn't see the face, only the outline of a figure, small, child-sized, unmoving. For 10 minutes he lay paralyzed, his breath shallow, his eyes fixed on that shadow. When the paralysis finally broke, he bolted upright, gasping, drenched, trembling. The shadow was gone, but the memory clung to him like smoke. Over the next week, he started vomiting, sweating, and collapsing at work. His skin grew pale, his lips cracked, and his body felt drained. Doctors said it was jaundice. They gave him medicine that helped for a few days, but every time he stopped taking it, the sickness came roaring back, worse than before. Anand began to believe something was feeding on him. The letter home. One evening, barely able to stand, he sat by his desk and wrote a letter to his eldest brother back in the village. "Brother, I'm not well. Something is wrong here. I keep hearing things. I think I need to come home. I'll take the train to Raipur in 2 days." He sealed the letter and dropped it off at the post office on his way to the doctor. That night, the doctor looked uneasy. "Your condition is getting worse," he said. "You need someone to take care of you. Don't stay alone." Anand just nodded. Alone was the only thing he'd ever known. When he returned to the hotel, he sat with the old night watchman, Thailand, a man in his 60s who smoked constantly and called everyone Beta, meaning son. Anand told him everything, the sickness, the hand, the child-shaped shadow. Thailand listened quietly, puffing his cigarette. "You should go home," he said. "Some things in this city are not for people like us." Anand agreed. His train would leave in 2 days. He just had to survive 2 more nights. But as he sat there, he noticed the smoke curling from Thailand's cigarette wasn't rising. It was drifting sideways, as if pulled towards something just behind Anand's shoulder. He turned. The hotel corridor was empty, except for the faint outline of small, wet footprints leading away into the dark. The return home. The day Anand boarded the train to Raipur, the city felt different, quieter, almost as if it was watching him leave. His body was weak, but the thought of home gave him a fragile hope. Maybe the nightmares would end once he stepped off that train. Maybe the thing that haunted him would stay behind, trapped in the corridors of that hotel. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails lulled him into a half-sleep. But somewhere between stations, he woke with a jolt. The compartment was dark, empty, and someone was humming. A child's voice, soft, tuneless, and familiar. It was the same humming he had heard outside his room that night. He sat perfectly still. The humming stopped. And from the glass of the window beside him, a faint fog bloomed, as if someone had breathed against it from the other side. By the time the train screeched into Raipur at dawn, Anand was pale and shaking. He told himself it was fever. He told himself the nightmare was over. He was wrong. The boy by the pond. From the station, Anand began walking toward Paragayan, his village. The road was empty, lined with dust and morning fog. Halfway there, he hitched a ride with a local truck driver heading in the same direction. When the truck dropped him at the edge of the village, he thanked the man and began walking the last mile home. The air smelled of smoke and wet soil. Birds were calling from the trees, but something felt off, like the forest was holding its breath. He reached the small pond that bordered the village. That's when he saw it. A heap of trash sat near the water, bottles, cloth, a dead dog half buried in the mud. And beside it, a boy. At first, Anand thought it was a child from the village, sitting there in the dirt. But as he stepped closer, his stomach turned. The boy was naked, his skin gray with filth, his hair matted and long. He was eating, tearing strips of meat from the dead dog with his teeth. Anand froze. "Hey! What are you?" The boy lifted his head. His eyes were wide and colorless. His mouth dripped red. And then he grinned. Anand stumbled back. The boy let out a guttural growl, not human, not animal, and began to crawl toward him on all fours. Anand turned and ran. He didn't stop until the thatched roofs of the village came into view. When he burst through the door of his family home, no one believed him. They thought he was delirious, his mind burned by illness. But that night, when his uncle and elder brother went to the pond, they found nothing. No boy. No dog. Not even footprints. They decided Anand must be hallucinating. They told him to rest. So he tried. The heads at the window. 5 nights passed. Anand's health worsened. His skin grew yellow and thin. The doctor said his blood count was dangerously low, but he barely listened anymore. All he wanted was one full night of peace. That night, he lay in bed staring at the window. Outside, the wind rattled the trees. He felt a faint warmth at his feet, a soft, slow exhale, like someone breathing near him. He sat up. 2 heads were hanging from the window frame. They weren't bleeding or grotesque, just there, swaying slightly, staring straight at him. Their eyes followed his every movement. Anand's scream caught in his throat. He pulled the blanket over his face and began reciting prayers under his breath, over and over, until exhaustion dragged him into sleep. When morning came, the window was empty. But the smell of something rotten lingered in the air. The thing in the field. The next night, Anand woke with an urgent need to go outside. There were no bathrooms inside village homes then. People went to the fields. He grabbed a small lantern and walked through the mist toward the open land behind his house. The fields were quiet. Too quiet. He struck a match to light a cigarette, and in that faint flare of orange he saw movement. Something was climbing down a tree about 20 feet away. He froze, the match burning down to his fingers. The creature dropped to the ground with a dull thud. At first, he thought it was a person. But when his eyes adjusted, he saw that its entire body was covered in thick, dark hair, and its fingernails were curved like claws. Its head twitched, then turned toward him, too fast, too unnatural. Anand dropped the lantern and ran. He didn't stop until he was back in his house, gasping, shaking. He didn't tell anyone what he saw. He just lay awake until morning, praying for daylight. The collapse. Weeks passed, and his body continued to fail. His brothers thought he was pretending, still the troublesome, dramatic sibling. But Anand knew this wasn't weakness. It was something else, something that had followed him, feeding on him slowly. Eventually, his leave ended, and he returned to Mumbai, thinner, weaker, haunted. He went back to work at the hotel, but his eyes had changed. They looked empty, glassy, as if some part of him had stayed behind by that pond. Then one night, while standing in front of his bathroom mirror, he felt the same cold whisper brush across his face, that same perfume, that same unseen breath. He looked up. The man staring back from the mirror wasn't him. Half of the reflection's face was blackened, decayed, smiling. Anand screamed and stumbled backward, clawing at his own skin. He could feel it, something trying to take over his body, to make space for itself. He ran downstairs, bleeding from his mouth, and collapsed beside Thailanj, the old watchman. The exorcism. When Anand regained consciousness, it was 3:30 a.m. He was sitting with Thailanj in a park near the hotel. The old man's fingers trembled, surrounded by a pile of burnt cigarette butts. "What happened?" Anand asked. Thailand's voice shook. "You changed. Your voice, your face. I've never seen anything like it. You weren't you." The old man decided to take him to a Pir Baba, a spiritual healer who lived near the hills on Mumbai's outskirts. When the Pir saw Anand, he immediately said, "Stay here." He listened to Thailand's story, nodded gravely, and handed Anand a single white flower. "Take this to the Haji Ali Dargah," he said, "and place it in the sea. Step back 10 steps, bow once, and whatever you do, don't look back." Anand did exactly as told. The wind howled around him, and as he stepped back, he felt something move behind him, light as breath, cold as death. But he didn't turn. He just kept walking until the sound faded. When he returned, the Pir explained, "You stepped on a cursed flower at the shrine weeks ago. A spirit, a jinn, had been trapped inside it. When you crushed it, it marked you. It wanted your body. But you are stronger than it. Your pain, your endurance, that is what saved you. Epilogue. Years later, Anand left the hotel. He returned to his village, married, and built a quiet life. He became a priest like his father, a man who knew too well that some prayers come from darkness. Today, when people ask him about the sleepless nights, he just smiles and says, "Never step on a flower near the sea." But every now and then, when he's alone, he swears he can still smell that faint perfume. Sweet, cold, and waiting.